The success of a social engineer targeting an organization is very heavily determined on how much information they have about that organization. The more data points they can put together and the better they can understand their target, the more likely they are to be successful in their objective. So building up this organizational picture is a real fundamental first step of social engineering, and it would often begin by using some of these basic OSINT sources. There are many different locations that very useful information about the target organization may be found. Perhaps the most obvious is their website. You're probably going to find their physical location. You may find who the executives of the organization are. So high-profile people in positions of power, they could be very useful targets for a social engineer. And of course, the products the organization makes. A social engineer who understands what it is the organization is actually producing is going to have information that will make it easier for them when they need to convince their target to hand over information. Understanding the technologies an organization uses is another valuable piece of information. Now, of course, there are many different places you could discover this. On the website is one good example. What server software are they running? This is leaked in many different ways. In fact, I talk about it extensively in courses such as Ethical Hacking, Hacking Web Servers. So, for example, what is leaked by response headers, via file extensions, via the structure of the source code. All of those are valid ways of starting to build a picture of the technologies that are used. Along with that, you'll find that many organizations have produced white papers with the likes of Microsoft, or perhaps been mentioned in announcements for things like partnerships. There's a lot of information out there about the technologies used by an organization, and that can be really useful information to the social engineer when they're trying to convince people to hand over information to them. Hey, I'm from Microsoft, the organization you're working so closely with, or something similar to that. Another source of very useful organizational reconnaissance can be a site tour. Does the organization provide the ability for you to come and see what they do? I myself have been on site tours before, not for social engineering purposes, but because I've been genuinely interested in what the organization does. And there are quite a few big name brands you're probably already very familiar with that offer that ability to bring people inside into their premises in order to see how they operate. That can give a social engineer quite a lot of valuable information, especially if they can observe the inner workings of the organization. That's something that they can then use when they're trying to engineer targets within that organization to hand over information to them. This is just a starting point though. There's a whole raft of other sources where organizational information can be discovered. For example, publicly listed companies have annual returns. Those sorts of documents often hold extensive information about the operations of the company. Now, that information in and of itself may not be directly useful to the social engineer, but it can become the gateway to the next piece of information. All of this helps them build up a picture of the organization. And even though we're talking about very publicly observable attributes, they can be enormously useful. With that understood, let's move on and start to talk about how you would identify very specific targets within an organization.